Well, folks, welcome back to another episode of the 6 Yard Line podcast. I'm Sean, and I have my co host right next to me, Noel. But today, we've got a special guest with us. Welcome to the show, Mr. Sharman, James Sharman from Footy Prime. So I'm sure all our Canadian viewers know who he is. And if you don't, go check them out, Footy Prime. They do everything you need to when it comes to soccer in this country, from MLS, CPL, NSL, our national teams. They cover it all, and they do an outstanding job of it. They are definitely the leader. So, James, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much for inviting me. No, I appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words. And yeah, it's nice to actually be on a podcast with some professional people for once. I appreciate that, honestly.
I think he's got to listen to us rant a bit before we do professional. We definitely get some hot takes because we're very passionate, right? So it's
that's the only way to be known. You have to be. It's sport, right? It's not life and death.
100%.
Despite what Shanty might have said.
Exactly. And, for us, if we didn't have the EPL, I think we would go crazy just being TFC fans. So we will touch on some TFC talk. But today is more, 6 Yard Line is an EPL show. And for those that don't know, James Sharman is a massive, massive Liverpool fan like myself. So we're here to celebrate and discuss this wonderful season. And yes, Noel will give you some time to talk on Forest, because at the end of the day, they still had a great season, right? Might not have been what they wanted.
Depends on who you ask.
Fair enough. But yeah, so Mr. Sharman, Liverpool, are you from that? Like, were you born there?
No, I'm not. I fully admit that I became a supporter of Liverpool because they were the best team in England when I grew up in the 80s. I fully admit it. I am not from there. I'm from the south. I'm about, a long way away from Liverpool. My parents, my family weren't really football people, so didn't have a club support. So you're a kid, who you support? Well, that's probably Liverpool. At that time in the 80s, all their top players were on all the commercials and all the TV, the radio. They're lifting championships, be it First Division crowns, European Cups, or Milk Cups, as it was called back in those days.
The Milk Cup, yeah, that's a good one.
Cup, yeah, right. I mean, there's been so many incarnations of it, right? But the Milk Cup was what it was. That's the League Cup, by the way, what it's called nowadays. Yep. It's been the Rumbelows Cup, the Worthington.
Oh, I loved it when it was the Rumbelows Cup. And if you don't know what Rumbelows was, it's a really dodgy English version of Best Buy.
Yeah, exactly what it was. Really dodgy. Yeah, like a really shit version of Best Buy, essentially. And I just, they had such characters in that team back in the 80s, from Bruce Grobbelaar in goal, who was my hero. Ian Rush, Mulby, Ronnie Whelan, Steve McMahon, all these massive personalities, which you don't really see as much in today's game, unfortunately. But they really kind of, endeared themselves to me. So that's why I'm a fan. And I've been through some ups and a whole lot of downs the last 30-odd years. So here we are, though, champions, Sean, once again.
Yes. So I don't have, similar to you, I mean, I'm born, bred, raised here. I grew up watching Soccer Saturday. So we had very limited access to international game period. But we got the English game on Saturday mornings. And in the late 80s, early 90s, I fell in love with Liverpool. And it was simply because, I'm a young black kid. You don't really see a lot of players often. And there's a player named John Barnes that was just bossing up the pitch.
Yep.
And he was inspirational for me. And he's why I connected with this club. And ever since then, like you said, I probably saw more bad years and only recently have started to enjoy the good. But I've never wavered. I stuck through it. All my friends, between the Man Uniteds and the Chelsea fans, that have to see them tease and gloat when they're winning. This is our time right now.
Yeah, you know what? John Barnes was one of my favorites too. When he was at Watford in the 80s, I just loved this guy. He was absolutely incredible. Got some England caps. So I remember vaguely when he made the switch to Liverpool in the, what year was that? Late 80s, 88 maybe?
Around 80, yeah.
I think it was 87, 88 season, wasn't it?
Yeah, right. I was so excited, and he just took the team on his shoulders, and he was such a brilliant, fantastic footballer, creative, just fun to watch, right? So 100%. I totally get why he stood out to you what a player, what a team, you know. And like I said, there's been a lot of down periods since then. Obviously, you know, really from Hillsborough, even from Heysel, you know, being kicked out of Europe. I remember watching that game in Turin on TV, on ITV it was, and just seeing these scenes in the stands. I was a kid, so the kind of vague memories, but it was awful. And then to be kicked out of Europe for so many years, and then to finally get back into Europe. But by that point, Liverpool was a spent force. Really.
Do you remember the trophy that they made up to replace European competition for the good teams in England? Do you remember this? The Simod Cup?
Oh, the Simod Cup. Wow. Yeah.
Like this is how I know this is showing my age here, right? But like this is how bad we are. Like we I think Forest won the Simod Cup, and everyone's like, "You won the what cup?" And like the Simod Cup. But I didn't even know what Simod was. I still don't know to this day what it was, but it was a cup, and we're like, "Woo, we won it."
What was it like? Just like the top teams knockout?
Yeah,
teams?
I think it was the ones that should have been in Europe. They played and
okay. Wow, manufactured. Jesus.
Yeah, it's a bit like Apple TV's the Leagues Cup, right? It was
pretty
back
much.
in the day. You got kicked out of Europe because, you know, obviously England in the 80s was, you know, obviously I grew up in Nottingham, spent a long time in what's affectionately known as the cowshed, the former Trent End, because it looked like a cowshed. It was caged. You're in there, it's like a barrier. You can find them on YouTube. There's, I think, Forest versus Coventry, where you see 8-year-old me pressed against the metal cage. My dad just behind me. It was like it was animals like in there. It was a rough place to be in the 80s. So there's some very good thing. I will tell you my favorite when Liverpool played Forest at the City Ground. Jan Molby, you mentioned him.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the song to this day of the song they used to sing at him. He's fat, he's round, he bounces on the ground. Jan Molby. That's his own fans. And I was just like, what a song.
You know what? It must have been in what year was this? This must have been like 1999 or something. I was doing a show called Sports World at the Score.
I remember Sports World. I remember.
And Brian Budd was my right hand man, my pundit. Right, Budgie played for Canada a couple of times, but he was well known for the superstars. But he knew everyone in football. He's one of those guys just knew everyone, and he had a connection with Liverpool. And they were over here for that Masters. Remember the Masters series? They played at the ACC at the time. All these old Liverpool and United players. And one day he calls me up and goes, "Hey, Shams, I got a chance to bring some guys in the studio today." I went, "Yeah, great. Well, sure, bring them in, Budgie." I'm thinking 3 or 4 players. And the Score was a tiny studio. It's about as big as my kitchen area where I'm sitting here. It's tiny. And he brought in 20 players, including Jan Molby, including Ronnie Whelan, Bruce Grobbelaar I mentioned, Stephen Norman Whiteside from United was there. It was crazy. It was like these heroes of me as a child all appearing in the studio, and I'm supposed to try and interview them all. It was complete organized chaos. All these guys have been on the piss all week in Toronto with Budgie.
Nice.
And it was amazing though. But Paul Parker was there, who's this amazing United right back. Dennis Irwin. There's Frank Stapleton. I mean, it was just like who's who of Liverpool and Man United players in this studio. And Jan Molby was there, and this guy's hands, man, like they just like one of those guys they kind of wrap around your hand. And he wasn't particularly tall guy. He was tall enough, but just a massive beast of a human being. So when you see that chant, that's bang on as he was. But what a player he was.
Yeah, I remember that because in those days they used to put them all because at that point of the 80s, the Bridgeford end of the stadium was just again it was a terrace, right? So it was kind of you could hear everything like, really loud and really clearly, and I was just like, is that an insulting song or is that a compliment? Like it wasn't like it's unusual to hear somebody just mocking their own. I think the only other time I've ever heard a song that was as good was when Les Ferdinand played for Newcastle and he was dating Danny Bear from the TV. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
So Danny Bear was like the biggest TV presenter in England at the time, and Les Ferdinand was dating her. And I always remember the Geordie fans were in the stands singing, "He's here, he's there, he's shagging Danny Bear, Les Ferdinand," and I was just like dying. And I remember looking over, and the Forest fans were all like busting and got laughing, and it was just a standing ovation from the Forest fans for the song, right? But they obviously panned to Danny Bear in the crowd, and she was just like,
well, I'll
Great
say this:
song.
when it comes to songs and chants, England by far does it. No one does it better, right? Like I've watched those videos on YouTube where you're looking at those, the classic songs, and it's like majority of them can't fly in today's day and age, but those are just legendary. And
Yeah, it's a sense of humor, right, as well. I think over there that you can get away with.
Yeah.
It's banter essentially. You can make fun of someone, but it's said with such love and such reverence that even the player appreciates it. And will acknowledge it as saying, "These guys love me, despite what they're actually saying about me." I love that. We need more of that in TFC, right? I mean, listen, not to get into TFC too soon, but I mean, there's some chance there, but sometimes they're trying a little bit too hard, I think. But a positive chance, a lot easier to create, with love in your heart than obviously what we're going through right now.
I think it's my biggest complaint with North American football. Like, it's just in terms of like everybody's got the same songs. It's like it's like they send out a memo. Like, here's the songs. This is what you sing, and it's just make it work for your team. And I generally find that's the part of, and I have lots of issues with just the way it is. But like, just there's no one with the real creativity to make those songs really about the players, because when you look at teams and you look at support in England, the songs are don't have to be complicated, right? I grew up with Stuart Pearce, and every time he walked out the tunnel, all you got was psycho, 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 psycho for 5 minutes straight, and that was it. It didn't have to be.
Well, that's why I would say that the Danny Dichio chant is the one that, I mean, it's just an easy one. Obviously, it's not, but it works, and it has a little bit of history to it, right? And that's TFC's. That's theirs. No one else can have that, right? Which is why that's the one that kind of stands out, even though it's the most simple of all chants. Like I said,
the Josie Seba one is the one that I just wish they would sing. I wish at 66 minutes we'd sing Josie and Seba, because that's this thing. But it's just in England, within a week of a player signing, they've got a song. Like somebody's got a song for it.
A cool pop song with a great chorus and rework the lyrics. Can't be that difficult, right?
Sometimes they're not even. Look at Mo Salah's song. Like, that's not off of any song that I could think of, right? But
what is the Mo Salah? Come on, Sean, give me the Mo Salah. I don't know.
I'm not going to butcher it. Mo Salah, running down the wing. Mo.
Yeah.
See, I'm gonna. He is the Egyptian king. I can't, like I said, I don't know it perfectly, but it's not.
That sounds like it's the Anthony Elanga one too, which is he's running down the Trent on the wing, and so that's really got big this year. There's a guy actually who I follow now on YouTube and on Spotify, and he does all the Forest songs, updates them, and then sings them. He's got a huge following now, so. Yeah, but it's the creativity, right? But it's funny because I saw what happened. I think halfway through the season, Anthony Elanga was on Forest TV, and they asked him a question, and he says, "Wait!" He comes running back, and he's like, "Whoever sings that song, I want to hear that in the stands." And then then you go to the game, and they're singing it, and it's thunderous, right? It's so loud, and I took my youngest kid to his first Forest game in December. And that was his comment. He's like, it's so loud, it's thunderous. And then he was like asking me, what are they singing? I'm like, I can't repeat that one. I'll tell you that one later.
But don't you find, and it's not perfect over there by many stretches. And it's certainly not what it used to be, but that relationship between the players and the fans is still there. That Elanga can go on a Forest, platform, talk to the fans, bring it to the stands. Whereas we just don't have that here. There's that. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's a disconnect, but it's disconnects, right? And maybe it's an MLSC thing.
It is. No, I think it's
too much.
I think it's an MLS league-wide thing because I know, Sharms, you're a big CPL fan like myself, but you can find the local podcast or whatever CPL team. They've had interviews with players. They've built those relationships. We don't have that. If you are overly critical of TFC. You hear the negative feedback from the club. The club is not afraid to say they're not a big fan, right? And Noel and I are not afraid to kind of say what we want on the Tunnel Club. We don't hold back because we're not affiliated with the club. We get nothing like that. But I think that's the problem, is that they're so afraid to have that, because I think they're afraid for players to be open. and to say things that maybe will stir the pot. So I think they like to keep things in-house.
Which is crazy. It's called personality, guys. That's how you sell the
100%.
personalities, you know, and endear themselves to the team and build a football community around the club.
Yep.
That's how you do it, you know, and to do it is so disingenuous. And to me, it just screams of naivety as well.
Well, if you look this year, right, Forest has obviously been having a good season and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that you see every week is them with the community. Every week, like the amount of times I've seen Nuno on a video, you know,
Yeah.
coming out of training, and then he's got a group of youngsters, you know, with disabilities that he's taking out. There's the amount of times that they are doing things like when they announced Nuno got manager of the month, I think for October, right, or November, one of those two. How they announced it, they filled one of the stands with local kids.
Oh, amazing.
And then they didn't tell Nuno. They just told him he was going to have a thing. And then they got up, and I think Ryan Yates gave him the trophy. And then the players went and sat in the stand next to the kids and their families. So, you know, it's a community thing. And I think,
Yeah.
you know, one thing that the EPL does very well is, you know, they do these community things. And one thing MLS has struggled with, and especially in the last 5 years since COVID, they've struggled to regain the community feel to it. And that's I say it to Sean all the time, like that, even if take 2018, it was not a great TFC year, but the community feel like was still a little bit there. We were in, you know, as supporters groups, and supporters were invited to the training ground. They had games where, you know, supporters just played all day. They had, you know, a corporate event where they invited a team from all the supporters groups, a few people from each team to make up a supporters team. Those things have stopped. But when you look at England and you look at how they're doing, it's every week. It's not.
Yep.
They are in their community. They are visible, whether they're doing good, the bad, and the ugly. Like even Southampton, who's just had a horrendous Premiership season. You know, I see videos of them in the community doing things, and I
Every
see
team.
them apologizing to fans and listening and taking the feedback. No different than they do in Italy, where if the supporters aren't happy, they vocalize it.
Mhm.
Here, we get shut
Silence.
down, and we get, you know, and it's funny because we had a couple of weeks away from doing any sort of recording or anything, and I got more comments and feedback about, you know, who I'd upset at MLSC because I just said it's an accountability. Then, you know, and I just find it's very funny that in England it's the hub of the community, it's the hub of the city, and it's just a shame that we don't really embrace it here because, you know.
Well, it's because we're not clubs here, right? We're franchises, and that's the North American sporting model. Whereas over there, you know, they did come from the working man's club or whatever, and built up over 100 years. The history is so long and storied over there compared to over here. Maybe in 100 years from now, it'll be more similar here. I doubt it. Now, all that said, and I agree with everything you said there, but it's not to say it's perfect there, right? At least, you know, in a TFC match or an MLS match, you can go and sit in any part of the stadium with any shirt on. You're going to be okay, pretty much. Might be a little bit of banter here and there, but you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
If the players have a bad game, they can go out for dinner that night with their missus and have a nice dinner, and they're okay. You can't do that over in England.
No.
Right? You speak to them. We often regale stories of Craig Forrest and Jimmy Brennan about over there. And they wouldn't even dream about going out in the town after a loss because they wouldn't be welcome. They could be physically attacked. You know, so it's not all great, but there's elements.
No, and I think that's always been the way, right? And we obviously grew up in England when it was not in the greatest times in those years. And, you know, I remember the first time I ever went to a stadium, I think I was 6 or 7. My dad said to me, "Look, anything you hear in this building, don't ever repeat," and you don't believe it. It's been my whole life. It's been the same. I've said the same to my kids too, right? Because that's what it was, and it wasn't exactly a friendly time, but it is passionate, right? It's funny you mentioned Jimmy Brennan because he left Forest the same year I came to Canada. My dad actually sent me a Jimmy Brennan picture in a Forest kit. And the first week of TFC when he was here, he signed it for me somewhere actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, because I was at the down at TFC and I said, oh, came from Nottingham. We had a quick chat and he signed my picture. It's somewhere in an envelope somewhere around.
Oh, Jimmy loves hanging out with the trickies. He does, you know. He actually goes there with his Brennan shirt on. No, he doesn't do that, but
yeah, it was one of those good coincidences. But I was, you know, and you know, obviously, I messaged, sent a tweet at Craig Forrest because that recently there was the like the 30th anniversary of Forest versus Ipswich,
Mhm.
and I was telling Sean this story. I always remember this. It's one that I can't remember last Wednesday, but I always remember Forest playing Ipswich, and Forest were up 4-0 at halftime, and Forest was in goal, and he was standing on his head, pretty much like Sean Johnson is at the moment.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I remember walking across Trent Bridge Inn with my dad because we were going back to the car. And we're like, man, we should have scored 7 today. That goalkeeper's not bad, eh? The Forest guy. I said, yeah, but he's from somewhere weird. And my dad's like, where? And I'm like, I don't know. I think he's a Yank. And then he's like, are you sure? I said, well, it's somewhere like that. He's weird. Like it's not somewhere you normally get a soccer player for. And in those days, you couldn't Google it, right? So anyway, I had the Forest program, which used to buy at the game, which they still sell, right? And I flipped it over, and it had the little Canadian flag. I'm like, oh, he's Canadian. And my dad's like, yeah, that is weird, eh?
Okay, you know what? At some point, we have to get Forrest on the show so that you guys could talk that story, because I'm sure there's more stories that Noel could tell, because Noel's been to a lot of games and he's definitely said a few things to a few players in his time.
Yeah, the worst one I ever did was if you remember Nigel Jemson, he used to play for Forest in '88, won the Rumbelows Cup or the Littlewoods Cup, I think it was that year. Littlewoods department store, long since gone. And he played for Notts County, which, if you don't know Nottingham, the stadium's only divided by the river. And I was calling him Judas, traitor, something else. He fired the ball into the stand, and I put my hand up like this, and it actually hit my finger and broke my finger.
Oh, nice. We love that.
So I was like, oops, my bad. But, I don't think he liked me calling him Judas and traitor for about 90 minutes straight. So
I haven't heard the name Nigel Jemson for about 20, 30 years, so it's good to hear him again. That's good.
Again, a classic chant, Jemo.
All right, so I guess it's time we do get into some Liverpool content, because that was what we were planning on.
Hijacked.
Charles, it's all good. You know what? I think our fans will actually appreciate that reminiscing. But we had a disappointing season last year, and I remember, I'm pretty sure we can all remember when we heard the announcement of Klopp leaving. Right? I was actually in Jamaica on a vacation, just chilling when I got that, and it did ruin that day, right? Because it's like, Klopp, like, what do you mean you're going, right? And so we had to deal with the rest of the season last year, the disappointing of, us starting to drop in the standings. Yeah, we did get a trophy, but then we didn't know what the offseason was going to bring. And then here comes his coach, Arne Slot. No one kind of knew what to expect. We saw next to no signings in the offseason. What we brought in Chiesa and signed a backup keeper for the future, right? So were you as nervous as I was walking into this season, as in like maybe top 4 would be, if he can do that, I will take that and go?
Yeah, I mean, I was quite concerned when I heard Arne Slot's name mentioned. I'm like, okay, who's that again? I'll be quite honest with you. We'd heard that Xabi Alonso was the man. I was so excited about Xabi coming back to Anfield. Oh, it'd be brilliant. And then Ruben Amorim was mentioned. Like, this guy's got a sexy name. He must be good. And then, thank Christ, that didn't happen. So then they get this bald guy from Denmark, and like, wow. I mean, it worked. It worked really well, obviously. And even his opening press conference, in that beautiful Dutch drawl of his, the way he kind of paid reverence to Klopp and what he had done. And I think Klopp was really smart too, because remember on the pitch before he left, he said, now you put your support behind the new guy, Arne Slot. And every fan loved Klopp so much that, okay, whatever you say, Jurgen, we'll do that. We'll give him a chance. And obviously it paid dividends in the end. But he's just a well-spoken guy, clearly a cultured football man. He's been through it. He's played at a decent standard, but never a star. And we saw straight away he tinkered with things. And like you said, the team was the same pretty much coming in. Chiesa, I was a little bit excited about, but not too much because he'd been hurt so much. But I was concerned given that last year they weren't very good. And there were some big injuries and some concerns there. I thought Mo was on the decline. I really thought that.
We all did.
Yeah.
And
obviously it didn't happen. Sorry, I've got my call coming in here. But yeah, in the end, it worked out brilliantly. A little tinky, a little there, less heavy metal football, as they like to say. You know, a bit more control, perhaps, but stand-up performances from Mo and from some guys we didn't expect it from. Gravenberch being the main one, right? That's the one position that we were very.
Really, you guys didn't expect much from him?
Well, I thought when they signed him, I thought a good player, but he didn't really stand out. And in that role, that six.
They were trying to get Zubimende, right?
Exactly.
Remember, that was the big signing they were trying to get the whole summer. That didn't work when he basically said he's not coming. He doesn't want to play for us. And, you didn't know what to expect. Like, Endo was basically more the number 6 last year, right? So you didn't know.
Yeah, he wasn't good.
He was okay. He was a serviceman. He's not
like role player. Come in for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, did a job.
That exactly right.
You're right, but not a star by any stretch.
And so I think that's where everyone was surprised, because Gravenberch didn't play the 6 role last year. I think he played either the 8 or the 10, probably more so the 8. And so you didn't really know what to expect, right? Like there was so much unknown walking into the season. You also have to add the fact that we're walking with the 3 salary issues that we have to deal with for basically the whole season, right? Yeah. With the Van Dijk, the Salah, and Trent, right? And as you said, we all thought Salah was kind of like most likely going to be on the decline when you look at the age factor, and naturally most players do start to show their wear and tear, right? Even with Van Dijk, but neither of them, if anything, those 2 players stepped up to a different level this year.
Which too, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He wasn't great last year. Again, showing some age. But something happened, and give the coach credit for that. A new guy comes in. Maybe they needed a new voice. I don't know what it was, but they both raised their games again from what was a very average campaign last year by their standards. Cody Gakpo, maybe it's the Dutch influence, I don't know, but showed me what I thought he could be when he first signed with the club. Really, really good. Up front, I mean, listen, Núñez didn't work out. We know that. Jota, I like Jota, but he's just too injury prone. Diaz came on late. The season was really good, but they still missed that guy, I think, up front. But despite that, when Mo's scoring, 20-odd goals, 30-odd goals in all competitions, it doesn't matter, right? That's where your goals coming from. Szoboszlai was incredible. Like, what a player he is.
I think, especially near the end, he really started to get his game going, because I think there was some criticism early on of lack of consistency, but especially as the new year rolled on, I felt he really started to get, cement himself and be more effective on the offensive side, right?
He's a very smooth footballer. He's a very smooth footballer. Like, you can just tell when you see somebody the first time, you can just tell that if they've got it or not, right? Like, he has it, right? I think he scored an absolute screamer, didn't he, earlier in the season? And it was just like, that's somebody that's got that skill, it's got that understanding, technically gifted. He's one of those players that, in a heartbeat, I'd take at Forest.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's that work rate with 2, isn't it?
Yeah.
And 100%. Watch games at Anfield, the fans, they appreciate work rate. You might not be the best player, but if you bust your ass out there and give it all and leave everything on the pitch, they're going to love you. And even when he's poor games, he's all over the pitch.
That's it. That's the thing. He may not always be the most effective offensively, but he's going to hustle. Like, he's going to run till he can't run no more. Like, I remember there was that one game where at the end he was gassed. You saw him just drop to the ground, but he gave 110% that game. And it was just like, you know what? You have to give it to him. McAllister this year, I thought, was just outstanding. Like, he's that he doesn't say much. He doesn't need to be the star, but he is so effective every game. His movement off the ball, knows when to be in the right space, especially when we're attacking. And his goals were always so crucial. And how he scored them, they weren't about doing anything fancy. It was always just making sure I'm in the right spot at the right moment when I need to be. And
there's that famous quote years ago, Barcelona, and I forget who it was. Oh no, sorry, it was with the French national team when they were winning everything, and they said, when things go wrong, we just get the ball to Zizou and we're okay. And that was a great quote. And I feel the same kind of thing with McAllister. I'm not comparing him to Zidane. I'm not. I promise you. Maybe a little bit. No, I'm not. But when the ball gets to his feet, everything's going to calm down a little bit. And I trust him so much. He's one guy I trust more than anyone in that 11. that he knows how to, react in certain positions, where to be, and take control of things. And that's we saw at the World Cup, right? Same thing for Argentina. But I mean, what a player he is! A guy that I completely take for granted sometimes because you don't always notice him. And then you see
that's the dangerous one, because those are the guys that you let go and then you don't realize, right? Like, from a TFC reference, Mark Delgado, right? I used to be like, what does he do? And then he left, and I find out what he did. And then you go and look at the Galaxy. They had him last year. They win the cup. They let him go. And look at him. You've got to be careful of those guys. There's always one that's, I think Man United was Yi-Sung Park, right? People didn't realize. Like, you talk about guys that just put an effort in, and fans appreciate the effort and the work rate. Those are the guys.
Hockey, right? I think glue guys that just
servicemen.
100%. They're the ones that do the what do they used to call as
dirty work,
the water boy, right?
Exactly.
That's what you need, I think. And if you look at some of the teams that struggle, is they don't have those guys that are the glue guys. And I think when you look at Liverpool this year, and consistency is the key, because those guys are consistent. I think you just mentioned a few of them, barring injuries in and out, but for the most part, you've got a consistent lineup, consistent midfield, and everybody knows everybody's job. And I think Liverpool's biggest thing about this year is they didn't really have to get out of second gear to win, because they were consistently playing well. Whereas I think me and Sean have sat on this podcast every week going, well, we don't know what team you're going to get. And you look at the league and you look at the standings. Arsenal just seemed to hit the self-destruct button for most of the season. We knew Spurs were going to lose. That was the only consistency. But you looked at Liverpool, and we talked about it like every week. It was just, they're just going to roll through teams. They don't have to get out of second gear, but everybody turns up. And you have to give Klopp some praise for the team that he left him with, because he did leave him. I said to Sean at the start of the season, I thought Liverpool would be high. I think we had our predictions. I thought they would be second or third, because I thought he left him in a really good place. And if I look at the players that he brought in, it's always a case of, how is a new manager going to take? But at the end of the day, he took well. I do find, in your point on Gakpo, was a good one. I think the Dutch thing there does help. Gravenberch, I think he's Dutch as well too, right? So I think they do have those players that have kind of stepped up this year. It does help having that, familiarity, language, and all those kind of things too. So, but Liverpool's key this year for me was just consistency, and they didn't really have to do anything other than just, put Mo Salah on the ball and let him do his thing, and
and let's be honest, right? As good as they were, and they were a great team this year, it was a bit of an off year for some of those teams in the Prem. It wasn't a classic season by any stretch. City's going to respond. They weren't obviously had their issues. Chelsea, I don't know what Chelsea are, but they find a way. Arsenal, it's self-employed. We know that's going to happen every single year. Haven't got a striker still. Tottenham, 20 losses? I mean, my God.
22, isn't it? 22.
22. Then you got the Villas and the Brightons and those group who are good teams. I like those teams a lot, but they're not going to really challenge for a title, I don't think. So it was a bit of an off year, but that takes nothing away from Liverpool.
No.
If they didn't win, it's a bit like when Leicester won. That was the year for Spurs or Chelsea to win, right? Spurs in particular. That was the year, because it was a down year for everyone. It wasn't to that extent this year, but it was a great opportunity for a very good team to win it, and they did.
Well, I think for a team like Arsenal, who I predicted this was their year, right? I felt like if you're going to win it, this has to be the year based on what Arteta's been building. But I think if anything, they may have made a step or two backwards. And I think we all know what they need to, they need a striker. But I think there's still more issues with that team than simply just adding a number 9. And I was watching it, and I know, I'm not a big fan of the overlap, but I did watch their recent episode with Thierry Henry, because I'm a big Henry fan, and you could see there's more than just like, they may be able to get a striker, but he's questioning their injury issues with the fact that players are falling weekly with hamstring injury. That becomes what's happening on the training pitch. There's a lot more issues with Arsenal, I think, than simply adding a number 9. Because going into this coming season, I'm going to have Liverpool as the favorite. I want to see which team, because let's already look at what the rumors signings are coming in, right? Like they're revamping that back line to make sure that, we're ready for anything that any team tries to do on the attacking front. if we get that Wirtz deal over the line, like,
Please.
could we not potentially have the strongest midfield in the world?
He looks like he's going to Real now, isn't he?
No, is that the latest rumor?
Yeah, this morning. Real entered the race to sign him.
But we'll see how that plays out, right? But then there's also, we're rumored for having a striker now. So I think
is the name everybody wants. I think that is the play that Liverpool should do. I think it's the play Arsenal should do. I think if you've not seen his record, I think he's 23 and 13 assists this year, right? So
which player is that? Sorry, I missed that.
Hugo Nketiah.
Nketiah, yeah.
So I think he's the one that's. I think if you take him to Liverpool, Arsenal, I think he will be the reason you win a title.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because both. I think you can't rely on Mo forever. I think that's always you've got to. I think City found out this year if you don't plan for those players that age out. The Premier League eats you up, and as good as you are as Pep,
right? And that's what Alex Ferguson was a master at, just knowing when. Every year, be like, "Wow, nobody's him." So, okay, it may be another good year out of him, but then the decline hits. So I think you're right, and that's why there's signs of Mo and these players to short-term contracts, right? They won't give guys in their 30s anything more than a couple of years, right? And you totally understand why, but you can't offer them success and trophies. And
the drop off is huge, right? Do you know what I mean? You look at some guys like Henderson's a good example, right? The drop off is massive. I would like to see him resign for Sunderland now they're back in the Premiership. I think that would be
great, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I think that would be a good move for them. But yeah, I just think if you get Liverpool needs a striker. Nunez is not the answer. It looks like he's gonna head off to Spain. I think he will be like Diego Forlan. I think you'll end up going to Spain, lighting it up, and you'll be like, what? But I think some guys just can't play in England. It is a physical league. Yeah. It is a difficult league. And I just think he looks a little out of sorts, right? So
he's in his own head because the talent is there. I mean, if you look back to the reason they signed him, he was popping in goals with Benfica left, right, and center. He was brilliant. All signs were there that he should be a top striker. But he can't seem to, he'll have a breakaway and all of a sudden he gets in his own head of what he needs to do. Like he just loses it and he just fumbles it. And that's the problem with him. The talent is there, but I think the pressure in England, and maybe it could be the weather. I think some of these South American players really can't adjust to the English weather.
It's lovely in Liverpool, Merseyside in February. It's beautiful.
It's not raining at all every day.
But, Nunes is an example of the fans love him, right? Because he does work hard and they understand that he's not ever going to be, Ian Rush, John Holdridge, but he's fun to watch and he works his ass off. So they will give him a lot of leeway. But towards the end, I think the patience is being tested, put it that way. So he needs a fresh start. And some people will spend a lot of money for him still because that potential. And then let's reinvest those funds up top. And like you said, I think Liverpool should be a favorite. When they're outbidding the cities of the world, which with the Wirtz deal we hear is the case, they're actually outbidding Man City, who have obviously some major issues, financially at the moment. It does say something about maybe a slight changing of the guard in the Prem for the short term. City's going nowhere. Don't get me wrong. They'll bounce back. They're Champions League once again. They're going to win championships again in the very near future. But I agree. Next year, as it stands right now, I think Liverpool will be the favourites.
Yeah. So
I think it's Liverpool and City next year, and then I think Arsenal will drop down to third.
I mean, with City, it really depends on, and I think we're probably all on the same page, is that these charges are going to get swept under the rug.
Yeah,
in the summer, I would say it's going to be done in the summer. They'll
get a little.
They've deliberately got a deal done. I think it's a financial deal because they don't want to deal with the repercussions of everything else because it will take years to fix who wins the titles and stuff like that.
And
it's going to be a financial penalty.
Courtroom battles right now, little things here and there, because I imagine they've got some pretty good lawyers. So
the best in the world apparently. So and the Premier League spent almost 200 million on just trying to get this these charges to stick. So you just know it's going to be a settlement of some sort.
They're going to work something out so that not only do they get off, but they're going to make sure that this is
they're going to lose the face, right?
Not only that, they're going to lose face, but
pull the pants down, right? So they didn't like that, and City's pull their pants down too.
they're going to make sure it can't happen again. So they're going to, all the loopholes that were there are going to be addressed to make sure that they don't get screwed over, because how can you save face? It's unless City gets a harsh penalty, you're going to look like the losers no matter what. So they have to find a way to make sure that because now every other team is going to be like, well, if City can do that, why can't we? So they're going to have to make sure all those loopholes are closed completely, which I still find it weird because, we see what Chelsea's doing, right? So
you just got to sell a hotel. You just got to sell your women's team
Sell
for
your
a record profit.
to yourself.
You got to figure out something. You just got to find a ways to cook the books, right? And spend 1.2 billion pounds over more than everybody else in the last 5 years. Like, it's just, I'm glad financial fair play is working so great.
Don't get me that. It's also the most boring topic in the world, but we have to address it, right? But my God, is there a more boring topic in the history of
PGMOL?
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, but there's more passion with that, right?
Oh, I got passion for that. I'd like to sit down with Howard Webb and just tell him why he's ruining the game. I just find it bonkers. You can't. They've this year again. We've talked about it every week. It's just like, how are these decisions made? Like, you affect positions, you affect people's livelihoods, and I do find it interesting. Sky Sports yesterday announced that Ref Watch is no longer a feature of Sky Sports for the upcoming season. And also, and Michael Owen sitting down with Howard Webb and talking about decisions that were got wrong was also removed from their programming. So you kind of know that the fix is in for next season anyway. So they're trying to clamp down on it. But again, it's just like VAR. I was in a stadium where it took 8 minutes for a VAR decision, and the fans were just literally screaming, and then they were singing a song that we can't repeat due to YouTube having censoring. But like, it's just a case of it is ruining the game. The offsides, even the offside, I think the other day on the last game of the season was like 7 or 8 minutes. I was angrily tweeting at Sean, like, this is ridiculous, but it is a boring subject, but it's something the last 2 years has been overruling the Premiership, and it has a big effect.
The offside one bothers me the most, in the sense of how seriously injured is a player going to get before we stop making these offside calls?
That's the point.
Just call it, right? And
you mean when a player has his intestines blown up from the inside in Taiwo Awoniyi? Like,
that's the point.
Just saying, it's just, again, it's just, we don't have to play this. We've seen it. We saw it here in MLS with Ralph Priso, right? He got that injury for 8 months, right? When it was clearly the flag should have gone up, and everyone and their brother can see it's offside. Like, it just
right. And that's the problem,
But that should be, if it really is a screw up if they blow it dead and the player does score, then they've got VAR, they can fix it, right? Like, at the end of the day. So
I know that's the problem, right? It's a crutch for the officials. That's the problem there. Arsene Wenger's going to get it all figured out for us. Apparently, he's going.
That's terrifying. I've seen him lose a lot of things. So,
but I know there's been people saying that I think one way to change is bringing in ex-players in that VAR room. You can't have just officials. You need people that have a different viewpoint from a player's perspective, right? Because you have these guys that are sitting there, and it's how they see the game, right? And I'm sorry, referees, you know what? You've gone through your coaching, your refereeing badges, you've studied the rules of the game, but sometimes you need to stop looking at it from a rules perspective and actually analyze it from what actually happened right here. Was that, was it a dangerous play? Yes or no? Like, stop trying to break it down to based on the law. You should be able to visually see that was bad call.
Watch it back real time. When you break something down frame by frame by frame, of course you can find something wrong, but that's not the sport, right? What did the referee actually see out there? So to me, it's like, watch the replays back real time far more than you watch the slow motions, and then say, okay, it's just pretty quick sport. Things happen.
It's the really bad ones for me that just send me off the edge. The João Pedro one from Brighton, where he swings an elbow, and it's clearly, you see the elbow, you see him trying to take his head off, and he stays on the pitch, and then the following week he scores a goal against the team that cost the team a defeat. Like, it's just, you impact the game based on a decision that was correctly last week that it impacts the game this week. And there's too
And
many of those in this
that's it.
league that's been going on this year. And I think that's the problem for me is Howard Webb also, needs to separate VAR and the referees from teams. They need to be separate teams, separate entities, and they need to just be, completely independent. When you listen to them talk about, this, that, and the other, and it's like, well, it's because it's his mate, right? That's like me, Sean being the ref and me being in VAR. Sean screws up, I'm going to back Sean, right? It's not, it doesn't work that way. It shouldn't be that way. It should be independent. And if they don't like that, then then Howard Webb needs to make a change. And if he's not the person to make a change, then the FA needs to actually do their job. But again, the FA is the biggest good old boys club in the country, so it's
exactly
it's the challenge with it. But no, as I say, I think for you guys, it's been a great season. Anytime you win the title, you tied United 20. Next year will be interesting because I don't think United's anywhere near a title.
They lost yesterday to an all-star team.
The Asian All-Stars.
Asian All-Star team.
After they took the open top bus to the stadium, it's cringe. I
must admit, it does make it even more enjoyable. Actually, each week seeing Liverpool win and United lose, it really does.
It does. So I guess before we move on to the little TFC talk, Noel, let's touch on Forest, right? Because you and I have talked about this. I think you guys have had a great season, going from 17th last year, fighting off relegation, especially with the points deduction, to turn around and basically be in a fight for the Champions League all season long, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you guys are the only team that Liverpool basically dropped points to all season long.
At home, yeah. We took 4 off you, actually, right?
Yeah, so, right. No other team can say that. Like, you guys were probably our toughest competition, but like, at the end,
it's really interesting because obviously I was in Nottingham last week, right? So I was back. I was trying to get tickets for the Chelsea game. No one was budging on those. Like, no matter how many favors I called in, no one was budging on giving me a ticket. So I had to watch the game from the pub. But it's funny because obviously a lot of people are very passionate. Like even in my own family. When my son went, he was like I think the 5th generation of our family that's a Forest supporter, right? So it's it's interesting to kind of see and to hear everyone's takes. And I spent a small fortune in the Forest store last week and listening and talking to people in there with my daughter, and some people are over the moon because obviously when I went in on Monday this week, they had Forest in Europe t-shirts for the Conference League, which made me laugh. I didn't buy one, but it was. Some people are disappointed because it's not Champions League. If I think when you're in the driving seat for so long in the season and then it kind of crumbled at the end, it's difficult, right? To not have those dreams of Champions League football, and then you just needed a goal on Sunday, just one to get your the Europa League. So it's been a. I was disappointed. I ain't gonna lie. I was disappointed. I had, obviously the last time Forest were in Europe, I think my dad took me to the Forest Bayern Munich game and watched Jurgen Klinsmann score, and that was 1995. And it was one of those, like, you have those dreams, and I will fly back for a European game because that's just the way I am. But it's tough to be so close, so far. And then somebody said something to me on Monday that I then sat back and went, that's a fair point. Somebody said to me on Monday, this time last year, your season ended at Chelsea and you were fighting to stay in the Premier League. This Sunday, we were fighting for a Champions League. And you're like, all right, that's a good perspective. I'll take that. I'll take it. That's a positive. You've got a good team. You've got some great players. We've got some positivity. And we've got an owner, unlike the Man United owners, unlike some of the other owners in this league, that wants to win, wants to spend money. And people laughed at him when he said he's going to get Forest in Europe. Well, it took him 3 years to get Forest in Europe, and so it's fantastic. It's been a good season. Honestly, I know you two are both Liverpool fans, so my favorite song chant of the year We're in his head. Arnie, we're in your head because he wouldn't stop talking about us. That
That's
chant
good.
is now probably they're just singing it now just because they like singing it, but it's a great song. So
Hey guys, I do need to jump in 5 minutes at 11 for my other podcast, that Footy Prime
All
thing. Sorry about that. But on Forest, I'm just saying I love seeing you back where you belong at the top, near the top. You know, I grew up watching Nigel Clough and Neil Webb and some of these brilliant players back in those days. They were a big part of the first division. And, you know, for a long time, you guys weren't relevant in the top division. And that it wasn't good for the game. So I'm very happy to see you back where you are.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
It's
Well,
fan base. It deserves it.
Since you didn't have to go, or you do have to go, you know what? We'll have to get you on again to talk some TFC.
Happy to.
Since we actually are working on doing our own TFC podcast, maybe we'll do it on that show versus this. It'll still be part of our own network, but we're kind of slowly moving away from Twitter. It's dying, as you can see. We still love our Twitter Spaces show, but we kind of want to be more front facing. So we're going to have our own TFC YouTube show soon. So we'll probably bring you on for that. And we definitely want to bring you on again to talk EPL. So get Jimmy, get Forrest, let them know we're going to have a mix show again of Footy Prime and the 6 Yard Line podcast. And we really appreciate you.
Apologize to Craig Forrest. I have sang a lot of songs at him. I have mocked his hair. I think I once yelled at him, "Get a haircut, you hippie."
Hey, he just shaved it this week, actually. So you can
I saw it.
Really?
Yeah.
It's gone.
Oh, really? That's
yeah.
I did. It's funny because this Kevin Kilban, right? Like he obviously I watched him play against Forest a lot of times, and this is why I believe in karma, right? So I yelled a lot of abuse at him over the years. I ain't gonna lie. And then I just happened to be in my wife's school, and he was there because he lives down the street from me, and I'm like, what are the odds? Like, come on. So I think I owe him an apology too. So
the world's conspiring to get you together.
I'm telling you, man, if people don't believe in karma, I'm like, it does. Like, I'm like, between Craig and Kevin, I'm like, if you ask me 30 years later, they're going to be, you know, people that I see regularly, you'd be like, oh, crap. So
no, listen, guys, they'll be happy to come on the show, I'm sure. But and as am I. Lots of fun. So I appreciate this, guys. And you're happy to talk TFC wherever you want, whenever you like. So just give me a bell.
Yeah, we have a lot to say as always on that.
All right. Shout out everyone on your show. Thanks again, Sharms.
Thanks, fellas. Enjoyed this.
Thanks, bud.
And lastly, make sure you go check out Sharman's Proper Pies. They got great stuff there as well. So take care.
Cheers.
Thanks, bud.
So yeah, he had to go. Noel, thank you for that. I know he's probably we're gonna end the show now. Folks, it's been a blast. We don't want to keep it long because he's got to jump on his other podcast. Noel, you and I will talk. Anything else?
No, I think we're good.
All right, so stay tuned. We will be bringing a full end of season show shortly. But that's about it. Take care, guys.